usually gets a very special name. It usually gets to name the ship class. Just prior to World War II, we were building a bunch of Gato class, Gato. I don't know why they say Gato class when it's a Spanish word. It means cat. Gato. So, the Balao class submarine, which is, believe it or not, the original Balao class ship is the picture that I used as a screensaver. Oh, it was pink. It was painted pink for that movie. That was because, even in the 1950s, folks understood that pink is just a color, and that there are lots of people that are afraid of the color pink. It offends their manly sensibilities, and through the movie you get to see that. But the actual story is not the way that they portrayed it in the movies. Just like the one where they hit the truck. In Operation Petticoat, I believe it was made in 1959. There was a couple of, well, there was four different stories. I apologize. I'm surprised they didn't put some Australians on the boat. In the movie, they rescued some Army nurses that were stuck on an island. That did happen, just not to the USS Sea Lion. There's also the situation where they had 3 berths, and they only had 2 of them in that movie. But there were 3 women from the Philippines. This is later in the war that this happened, though. In Operation Petticoat, it takes place between, I want to say December 10th, 1941 is when it's supposed to take place, through to the beginning of January in 1942. So it takes up about a month's worth of time in the war. And it is a fictional story. But the story of it being a pink submarine is almost true. They got hit a little bit in their black paint. That's something that was very unique to Americans. The British were not so into that. Um, Obviously, the U-boats were painted in a standard gray. The British did have a couple of their X-craft, of course, were painted black. And then there's the is it the U-571? Is that right? That's probably not it. But there's a submarine that they just recently uncovered. It was covered with a rubber substance. It was flat sheets of rubber with holes in it, and they layered these pieces of rubber, these rubber mats, all around the ship to help prevent the ship from being hurt. But for the most part, everybody went with gray. The United States military, even though in the movie they're painting everything gray, they went pretty well with a standard white, a standard black, or both. Matter of fact, some captains got inventive with their paint jobs and tried to make it look stylistic. Many times when you see the Balao class submarines, it's literally a Gato class that's upgraded. It's just got a thicker skin. That's why they call them the Gatos, the thin skin boats, and the Balao class, the thick skin. Now, the thing I say about the color pink, how pink is the manliest color there is, because so many men are afraid of the color pink, it's just as true today as it was back then. The part where they launched a torpedo and it went up on shore and blew up a truck. Well, it was actually a bus. Um, so there is that. It's also that when they hit that, it wasn't a situation like an Operation Petticoat where you had the army nurses on there, and one of them is, and this is for comic relief in the 1950s. One of the ladies on board the ship is stacked and accident prone, and because her chest hit something while she was trying to give the captain a vitamin, she's gonna insist that this captain take the vitamin. This is something through the whole movie. This lady just screws things up, and the reality is the fish that's what they call a torpedo. Once it's in the water, it's a fish. Um, the fish in the water. I'm sure you guys who've watched submarine movies have heard that. We got a fish in the water. That doesn't matter if it's your fish or their fish. If it's in the water, it's a fish. And those are all things that actually happened. They didn't happen to the USS Sea Lion. None of them did. The ship itself that played the role of the Sea Lion was the original Balao class submarine, the SS Balao. It's funny that they used that ship for the movie because they didn't have Balao class submarines in 1941. They just didn't exist. But it looked just like a Gato class, so who's gonna know? Now, as far as Tokyo Rose goes, Tokyo Rose did make mention of the red submarine. Like I said, it's a Hollywood version, the Hollyweird version. Yes, it was a red submarine, a red pirate submarine is what Tokyo Rose called it. And that was because they sank 3 ships while painted in red lead. For those of you who don't know what red lead is, it's a type of substance. It's a paint, or rather a primer, a very, very bright red primer. If you want to see what red lead looks like, type up the word El Hermione. L'Hermione. El Hermione. It's a famous ship, and they made a replica of it. And when they made the replica of it, they tried to use as many original materials as possible. That means using red lead, which, by the way, we still use red lead today. The reason for it is because it's anti-biologic properties. Many of you know that barnacles like to stick themselves to the bottom of your boats. Once the barnacles have set themselves into your boats, there is marine growth that'll be able to grow where there was something smooth that you just get a light layer of plankton on it, or just a little bit of, I guess it's a type of sea sponge, that green gunk that's all over everything. And I didn't realize it's actually a type of sponge. It sticks on ships all over the world, and it's a type of sponge. It's just a micro sponge. It's too small to realize what exactly it is. You got to look at it under a microscope. Now, the red lead, what it does is anything biologic that tries to attach to it, especially something that's a quasi-animal like barnacles, it doesn't want to stick. That's why it was frequent and often that they had to haul the whole ship out of the water and paint the whole thing red. We've also got the issue of the sea eats things quickly. If there's a bit of paint that has flaked off, and you're under the water for, 14 days, you're not literally under the water the whole time, but all of the areas that are exposed And mind you, you've got a bunch of electrical workings that are running through your entire ship, and they're partially magnetizing your hull. Now, that partial magnetism and the slight bit of current that's going through, anything that is exposed is going to start eating away immediately. So that red lead paint, it gives you a coat in between your ship and the sea, and it's not much. I mean, it's just a layer of paint. Um, there was a point to that. Ah, yes, the red lead. This goes all the way back to the beginning, the seafaring. That was what we used on the British ships before they started putting copper plating on. And then even after they put the copper plating on, they realized they still needed to put red lead on it. So when they have that part in there about the pink submarine, that's a true story, close to a true story. It was actually a red submarine, not a pink one. And it wasn't the USS Balao, and it wasn't the USS Sea Lion. I wanted to say it's the USS Archerfish, but I'm probably wrong about that. And if there's anybody alive who served on the Archerfish who is pissed off that I gave the wrong ship, I do apologize. The Balao class submarine served with distinction, not only in our military, but 11 other navies worldwide. After the war, we gave our old subs to a lot of people, but we made sure that we finished the last 5 in the series, because what we were doing is building them in series. We had a total order of about 200 Balao class submarines that were ordered. We made mass quantities of the same thing, and that's why we were able to push out so many. At the end of the war, the reason that even though we scrapped pretty much all of the other ships, the reason that we didn't scrap the submarines is because they were new enough, big enough, and with modern technology coming online at that point where we had engines that had almost twice the horsepower, twice the torque, and half the size, well, it left a lot of room for improvement. Like, there's a lot of things that could be taken out and readjusted and changed. There's a lot of stuff that could be upgraded. The Balao class submarine had so much room in it, and you wouldn't think so going through it, but if you compare it with, say, the Type 7 U-boat, you probably would have much rather served aboard a USS Balao, or aboard a Balao class submarine. We had bigger submarines called fleet submarines, and that's all we operated. We didn't make anything else. When we talk about the Argonaut, this is a submarine that was like 380 foot long, 386 foot long. This thing is huge. And its rear end was set up as a mine layer. Any of y'all who know about mine laying, well, it's a pretty interesting boat to learn about, but ultimately they realized that it was not going to be serving in that role. And as a result, the other ships in that class, which there's only, I want to say, 4 of them altogether, and they were all built differently. Later on during the war, when we were having to subcontract stuff out, we were also having naval yards build things. Now, there's a difference between the naval yard at Portsmouth, the naval yard at Norfolk, and the naval yard at Bremerton. All of them build ships. All of them do. Only 2 of those are actually... only 2 of them are actual sub-tender stations. And one of them is Bremerton. It's been a sub-tender station since its inception as a modern military station. And today, it's used to disassemble many of our later class submarines. when I was there in the 90s, I got to actually see half of a submarine. I got to see the lower half of the submarine because the upper half had already been taken down. They were disassembling them. And at the time that they were disassembling those submarines, there was also a lot going on as far as people not being happy with the Minuteman rockets, not being happy with the, what is it, is it the Triton 3? Is that it? Anyway, there was a girl I had a crush on in Washington State, and her name was Adrienne Moore. And she wasn't actually very nice. I just thought she was pretty, and everybody told me that she was pretty, and they all shoved it on me that she's pretty, and she's a white girl, and I'm a white guy, so I should go ask out this white girl. Isn't it strange how people's brains work? Anyway, she wasn't interested in me. But that's not the moral of the story here. Adrienne Moore and her sister are actually heroes of mine. I found out about an incident after leaving. It turned out that the missiles that were being sent up, there were some people who decided to protest those missiles, including that mean girl, Adrienne Moore, and her sister. They were arrested for protesting against a new missile program. And now today, we got a lot of people, even in Congress, who are backing up how stupid that idea was, and that we really shouldn't be investing any more of our future into dropping nukes on people. We have nukes. We don't need more. So, there's a pink submarine on the front of this. And although the story is not exactly how it was, the same as if you guys watch Das Boot, they actually put stories together from 11 different submarines to make the movie Das Boot. 11 different ones. Although you could argue that they modeled it after more than that, because when you've got 1,100 U-boats overall, 1,600 that are commissioned during the war, but most of them, end of the war, they weren't fit for duty. Anyway, this is what I do. I try to keep my mind occupied. I try to find people to help me. When they say that they'll help me, I hurry up and wait. There was a lady who's going to help me yesterday, and she was going to call me the day before, and you know, I'd already been through 6 years of this prior to that, and I fucking ripped her ass about it. Hey, lady, you know, for you, it's just a couple of days, you know. For you, it's I need to be patient. It's only been a couple of days. For me, it's been, hey, I reached out to you before Natalie was ever killed. It's been more than a couple of days. Natalie was killed in 2017. It's now 2022. It's been more than a couple of days. Anyway, the British are about the only ones that don't put a fair amount into telling their submariner stories. Because some British admiral thought that using submarines was a damn done English thing to do. Well, it's not. The reason that the British submarines aren't given the credit that they should is because they were the most effective of any force that the British had as far as their admiralty goes. They did a better job than the destroyers, better job than the destroyer escorts. They sank more shipping than all of their surface fleet. All of it combined. That's not just including battleships and destroyers, cruisers, that's aircraft carriers, that's everything. Now, the British always give us very conservative numbers on that. But, according to the British, and also according to the Japanese, British really took down a good percentage of the shipping on both sides. Both sides of the ocean. Or the oceans, I should say. Because we've got two major oceans, don't we? The Atlantic and the Pacific. German submarines primarily operated in the Atlantic. And Japanese, obviously, primarily in the Pacific. But we did have Japanese submarines. There's at least two of them that are sitting at the bottom of the English Channel. It's because they were trading with Germany and exchanging secrets. We've also got several German subs that were sunk with Japanese Admiralty on board at the end of the war. And we also have sightings as well as sinkings of German U-boats over in the Sea of Japan, or the Strait of Japan, I should say. It's not a real sea. It's friggin' tiny. It's like the English Channel. We should just call it the Japanese Channel. Anyway, you know, I make these videos to try to keep my mind straight. I make them when I am doing my best not to have a complete and total meltdown. I make these when I can't perform well enough to do anything other than just speak about it. And I try to give you guys an education. Today, I believe, is the 10th. Yep, and it is Saturday the 10th. So I suppose, I guess I could consider this this day in history, December 10th. Because, like I said, that's when the story starts on that Hollywood movie. But also, as we know, that Hollywood movie is not the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's a story that was a mix of different stories from different submarines, and they put them all together into one story for your entertainment, so that you could know the stories or the impact of the stories, even though the story itself is fictional. I'm going to get off of this now, and I'm going to either try to live stream a movie, or stream a movie so that I can try to take my mind off of everything, but that doesn't work. That's the thing, is I'm just filling in time until there's somebody who cares enough to actually help. Somebody who's willing to help the way that actually works. Preventing this was easy. Preventing all of this abuse was easy. Preventing Natalie Bollinger from getting her head shot off was easy. All it would have taken is one person to actually give a fuck before she was killed. As you can see, there's a lot of people who are pissed off at me because I posted up evidence that I went to them before Natalie was killed, that I tried to get help, that they blew me off. And then later on, they don't want to be honest about that, do they? Nobody wants to admit that they fucked up. I don't want to admit when I fuck up, so why do I? Because I've got a plan. Before Natalie was killed, I told all my worst sins on Facebook. I told y'all I wasn't perfect. Something that I have kept up every day since. Tell the fucking truth. I got a lot of respect for veterans. I got zero respect for current serving soldiers. Just because you got duped doesn't mean I owe you shit. You want to tell me you go kill Koreans and North Vietnamese and Viet Cong guerrillas? You gonna tell me that you did that for freedom that I don't have? You very special kind of stupid, son. You gonna tell me you're over there in Iraq, Afghanistan, shooting foreign kids for me? I'm gonna tell you something. You do not have my support. If you're gonna go to foreign countries and you're gonna shoot foreign kids and say it's for me, you and I aren't fucking friends. You're not doing shit for me. You're making things worse and you're killing kids. No, I will not support that. I will not support targeting civilian populations. I will not support using firebombs, especially because firebombs serve no purpose except for fear. The United States, we're the biggest bullies on the planet. We bully everybody, including our own allies. Even Great Britain bows down to our will. Even Great Britain. I wonder how long it's going to be until Adolf Hitler or a Donald Trump gains control of England and says, I'm going to make Britain great again. You fucking fud. Elmer J, that's what you are. An Elmer J.